Welcome back to another episode of Intuitive Guidance with Torniamo. In this episode, I will be going solo. Recently, I have been doing lots of conversations with other spiritual practitioners about their journey, about their practice, about how they got into this space, and there's lots more episodes like that coming out. I'll also be doing live readings with people. So if you've been following me for a while, you will have seen this type of content coming out. But I also want to go solo, where I reflect, contemplate, and share some of the avenues that I am exploring in my practice at the moment. Recently, I have taken on some more students. I've done it before, and I've sort of rebirth, I guess, this practice of taking on some students. And one of the things that's a part of that program, a part of that training, is what it means to be an ethical and responsible practitioner. I think generally in the more intuitive spiritual space, this is something that's growing, right? Thinking around what it means to be that. I think previously that hasn't been getting a lot of airtime, but anyone who spends any time on Instagram and follows the right accounts will see that this is a growing space within the intuitive spiritual space, because there's no board of intuitive practitioners, psychic, clairvoyants, mediums, sound practitioners. Like, there's no board who regulates us all, right? It has to become somewhat of a personal practice to really take responsibility of what it is that we're doing. I think that, unfortunately, I think that there are some people out there, and I'm not going to point fingers, this is just my observations, is that I think there are some practitioners out there who are leaning into sensationalism to impress, when I actually don't think that's what we need, both as practitioners and also as clients. Let's go with that word. It has a bit of a transactional feeling to it, but let's go with clients. I don't necessarily think that's what people need, because I think that we are stepping into a time where destabilization, ungroundedness, and grandiose performance will become so much more prevalent. And so I'm hoping, and especially this is something that I am focusing on in my training, is that the practitioners that I am helping develop, they will one day stand on their 2 feet and the work is their own. What I'm helping them to do is to trust that they are grounded enough in themselves, not having to embellish or make anything up. They can be trusting in themselves. Any of us who have been spending any time on Instagram or YouTube, we will be consuming some level of spiritual content around tarot, intuition, energy work. And I do strongly believe that this more responsible, ethical piece is in some ways still getting skipped. Like I said, it is growing, but it's still getting skipped. And I think that is so important that we start talking more about what does it mean to show up with integrity, with ethics, with morals in this moment, as the world is really shaky right now, right? And in those times where everything seems shaky, a lot of more people will also then be seeking out spiritual insights and intuitive content. And it's really then easy to create content and experiences that allure a vulnerable mind, right? To pull them into one's orbit. And as a practitioner, we have to be so careful in that space to make sure that we are stepping into that experience with integrity, with truth, with honesty, and truly don't make stuff up and create experiences that are too sensational just to impress, when what somebody needs is something quite different. As you well know, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I do tarot readings, energy alignment, intuitive readings, but I also sing, right? And I create these intuitive sonic experiences, and as a part of that, there is a performative aspect. And that's something that I am sort of, really working within myself of how can I perform my sonic attunements in such a way that it helps my client, but it stays true and it doesn't become an over performance that I add too many layers just so that people will feel that it's interesting. It's just allowing the notes and the tones to be interesting by themselves. Again, an interesting part of that practice is that, and this is something I'm working on, is that I keep on wanting to fill that silence, the silence between the notes, between the tones. I want to add melodies, and sometimes that's really useful, right? But it's also just about allowing the vowels, the sounds, the notes, the space to breathe, to expand, and to stand on its both 2 feet without adding too many layers. Although it's nice with some glimmers here and there, of a little note that shifts, but it's also okay to just create and allow these things to expand and stand on its 2 own feet. 2 things that I will be sort of delving into in the rest of this episode is to trust what comes, and then also to be okay with getting nothing. I've kind of already started touching on both of those 2 things. Trusting what comes. Trust that the insight, the guidance, the wisdom that is emerging through the co-creating experience between the client and myself, the practitioner, you, the practitioner, client, trusting that the insight and guidance and wisdom that shows up in that moment is enough. It is exactly what's meant to come through in that moment, and it's really easy as a practitioner to start embellishing, to start imagining, to then come up with content which, it's easy to sound convincing and dramatic and sensationalist, right? And that, in the short run, might really activate some psychological needs within your clients, but it's also not useful. It's not helpful, because I think that in the long term might actually be destabilizing. I think it might be confusing, and I don't necessarily believe that it helps a client in their day-to-day, right? Clients comes to me for an experience which are outside of their day-to-day, but the insight, the wisdom, the guidance that's co-created in that episode is meant to support their day-to-day. It's not meant to be an experience that just stays in that experience. And it's easy for it to just stay in that experience if we start making things up. And I think that's what really important. We have to just get out of our own way, get out of our ego, and be with what comes in that moment. It's not easy, but it is certainly possible. Of course, clients will also come with expectations of transformative insights, and so it's really important to communicate with the people that we're working with that sometimes in the moment it might not seem so dramatic, but actually that's what's needed in that moment over something which is wacky or far out, and so on and so forth. And then another thing which takes a lot of practice to be ethical around is when you get nothing at all. Nothing happens. You're sitting in that container with your client and nothing comes. And you can feel the pressure of the silence, right? And being in that silence, and it's just silent. Like that. It is something that I've had to practice. It's something that I've had to sit with. And I think that a lot of trust easily erodes in this space when we try to fill it. Like, I think there's damage being done there. Of course, that sounds pretty dramatic in and itself, but at the same time, clients come to us because they trust us to be honest. They trust us to have integrity. They trust us to not perform certainty when we don't actually have it. And again, I think these are practices that are so key to take care for, So why does this matter now? drawing us all the way back to the beginning. I think we are stepping into a time where there is going to be more ungroundedness, more instances of practitioners, people, you name it, jumping into ungrounded and sensationalist and grandiose performances. And I'm hoping that people over time will be more sort of tired of that, and that there will be a growing hunger towards experiences that actually holds you, right? Something that is grounded, something that is honest, and where a practitioner will tell you the truth, right? Including when the truth is, I'm not getting anything at all today, and that's okay. I don't think the world needs more people that can impress. It needs more people that can hold tender, severe experiences in a way which is loving, compassionate, and sometimes incredibly unglamorous, right? Being honest and trusting what comes and being okay with getting nothing is unglamorous. But I also think that over time, that's really what's going to stand true to people and keep on bringing people back to you as a practitioner, and also you as a client, hopefully will go back to people who are more like that. Of course, you will always have to leave with something that you found valuable, right? If you didn't find anything valuable, you most likely won't come back. So if you've been working with me, for example, I want you to understand that this is stuff that my sessions are built on. Not performance, not sensationalism, just grounded presence with what actually is there with you in this moment. And if you're a practitioner who are wanting to develop your own gifts and do this with integrity, with groundedness, and with real honesty at the center of it, this is exactly the kind of practitioner that I'm helping people develop into as a part of my intuitive school. That's all that it's built around. It's training for people who want to develop their intuitive practice in the right way. And if you're interested in having a one-to-one with me as a client, or want to come and join my intuitive practitioner training, all of that information is linked in the bio below this video. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time to do so. I hope that you found this useful, and if you have any questions, do let me know, and I'll definitely come back to you. This is an area that I would love to develop more of, what it means to be an intuitive practitioner in the 21st century. So if there's any areas of that you would like me to comment on, do let me know. And if you enjoy this, hit that like button, subscribe button, and I will see you here next time. Thank you so much.